Welcome back. Welcome back. This is the People's Voice. I am Trey Evans, and I am the People's Voice. Thank you again for checking out the podcast this week. As always, it is greatly appreciated. As always, we thank everyone who has taken some time to listen to the podcast today. We do understand that you could be utilizing your time to do something else, so we are appreciative that you're taking that time to spend with us. As always, if this information is valuable and you find it to be enlightening and worth sharing, we ask that you subscribe to the podcast and turn on notifications. That way you'll be notified when each episode is released. And we do put out a new episode each and every Friday, which is heard on all podcast platforms. And then we also put a video out on YouTube every Wednesday as well for those who would like to watch the podcast. But in any event, we say welcome, and welcome to the People's Voice podcast. So today I want to get into the topic and cover the opioid addiction in America. And I specifically want to talk about the opioid addiction in terms of where it's at today. I also want to talk about the national settlement that was agreed to as a result of the damage that was done regarding the opioid crisis. And then talk a little bit about where that money has gone. And then, of course, close out with some information for those who may be still struggling with opioid addiction. So that's what I want to talk about today. Opioid addiction in America. And I wanted to talk about this today because I came across a story from a couple of news sources about the decline in drug addiction, or at least drug overdoses in the United States. And that prompted me to kind of do a little bit more research because I wanted to see what that number looked like. And it has been a sharp decline. But in addition, I wanted to understand what has happened in terms of the number of companies that were responsible for creating an epidemic. And I'm talking specifically about opioids now. And for those who may not be familiar with that crisis or that issue, it was devastating to the country, to multiple communities. It was not, it did not discriminate in terms of who was affected by opioids. And so I wanted to talk about that today. I wanted to talk about the decline and then talk about the settlement as well that was made between these companies that were responsible for the distribution, marketing, and also selling of that drug. And of course, obviously, as it made its way onto the street level as well. And then we'll close out from there. I was watching this story from CBS News. Dr. Gupta, who is I believe he's the director of the White House drug policy. I'll get his title correct, but he was on CBS News, and he talked about the decline in drug overdoses. So let me play that, and then I'll continue from there. But this is from CBS News. So.
12-month period. Between August 2023 and the same month in 2024, overdose deaths decreased by 22%. The number of predicted overdoses by the CDC is the lowest it's been since August 2020 and comes after they peaked in the summer of 2023. CBS News Homeland Security and Justice reporter Nicole Scanga sat down with Dr. Rahul Gupta, the White House Director of National Drug Control Policy, in an exclusive interview to discuss the decline in overdose deaths. Listen to this.
Do you feel like we're out of the woods?
Not really yet, because here's why. We still have over 90,000 people that are still dying every single year. So we have our work cut out for us as a nation. So while we're making significant progress, what we have learned is those policies and those investments that do work.
Ms. Cole Scanger joins us now.
And he is, Dr. Gupta is the director of the National Drug Control Policy. But as you heard him say there, and as you saw in that graphic, drug overdoses have decreased tremendously here in the United States. I mean, that graph showed at its peak, you had deaths from drug overdoses almost at, close to well over 100,000 a year in 2022 and 2023, as of last year's reported that deaths have, dropped, as the doctor said, to about 90,000 deaths per year, which is still way too much. I don't want to, diminish that at all, but there has been a drop. The reason I'm highlighting this is because, as I was saying in the beginning, is that during the late 90s, I think around 97, 95, 96, 97, somewhere in there, 98, is when it has been reported and documented when the opioid, the Oxycontin crisis, if you will, really began to take shape. And for those who don't know, Oxycontin is a painkiller, and this painkiller that's created by several companies. I know Johnson & Johnson is one of them, but I'll get the other ones. Created this drug, and this drug ended up getting to not only obviously people who were suffering with debilitating pain, but it became a drug that started to be used in recreation, and then obviously became a huge addiction for multiple people throughout the country. I'm trying to read here exactly what it was designed for, but I know it says that it was marketed, I guess, for cancer-related pain, but I won't get into that. I don't want to get too technical into that. But in any event, going back, it's a painkiller. Oxycontin is a painkiller, and it became widely distributed beyond people that actually were affected or afflicted with any pain. I set that as the background, so now I'm going to push it forward to get to what the settlement was. So again, late 90s, let's just call it 97, 98, hits the market, and then for literally almost 2 decades, or at least 15 years, depending on 15 years or more, it just ravaged neighborhoods and communities across the country. In 2021, and I'm jumping over all of the legalities and things of that nature. In 2021, there was a national settlement. And when I say settlement, that was agreed upon between the companies that distributed, marketed, and sold Oxycontin, opioids, and of course those who were directly involved in this crisis. Now, the companies that were involved in it, as I said, were multi-layered. Matter of fact, pulling up this case study from Brown Greer, which serves as a directing administrator for the National Opioid Settlement. It initially, this settlement, which started off at $45 billion, was between the state and local subdivision governments and the companies that were involved in the distribution, marketing, and selling of OxyContin, during that crisis. And those companies were, in terms of the distributors, were Amerisource, Bergen, Cardinal Health, and McKesson. In terms of the manufacturers of the drug, you had Johnson & Johnson, Tevia, and Allergan. I think it's Allergan. And then in terms of those who were responsible for selling it, you have your pharmacy retailers, CVS, Walgreens, Walmart, and Kroger. And at the time when the settlement came down, it was $45 billion. That was in 2021. Since then, there have been additional companies added to it in terms of responsibility for paying that settlement. Now, be clear, that settlement basically allowed these companies to admit to no wrongdoing, because in America, that talks, that clears up a lot of things. And so these companies were basically pursued initially to be prosecuted for being responsible for these crimes, but then they ultimately settled and this fund was established. In terms of the additional companies that were also in that, or actually say added to that settlement case after the fact, you also have, in terms of notable companies, you have Rite Aid, which is the pharmaceutical company, and then you also have Purdue, which is, and again, Purdue Pharma. So this is Purdue. This is not the chicken company. And I have to make that distinction because when I first heard it, I thought the same thing. But Purdue Pharma was also added to that as well. And they're responsible. They're a manufacturer. They were a manufacturer as well. And they were responsible for an additional $7.4 billion on top of the original $45 billion. So I go through all of that to say, where is this money going? Because this is a lot of money. And one would think, since this settlement came about in 2021, you might think, okay, well, the settlement was made. The money must be going to the people that were affected in this, and or to, as it's stated in the agreement, to the states, and the states are handling this. No. That's not the case at all. In fact, this settlement, and many of these settlements, will be paid out in increments over the next 10 to 15 years. I think the latest date in terms of a payment that I saw was 2038, something like that. But these payments that have been, this money that has been made so far is very much under question in terms of what is it being paid to and who's overseeing this money from a state level. I was reading a report from the Kaiser Family Foundation where they kind of broke out some of the payments that have been made, or at least were made up until 2022, between 2022 and 2023. And I'm pulling this up here for those of you who are watching YouTube. And in this graph, if you will, they show money that has been spent, money that has been set aside, and money that is untrackable between the various states that have been awarded this money as part of this national opioid settlement. And for instance, you look at Alabama. Now, Alabama has been designated as receiving well over $50 million for this from this opioid settlement, but in their reporting, and this is from between 2022 and 2022 and 2023, their track in terms of being able to their public reporting in terms of it being trackable of where this money is going, they provided no reports. And you have this going on in several different states where, you know, the majority of the money is not able to be tracked from a public standpoint. There's no true reporting of the money, so no one knows where this money is going. And this money is not necessarily going to treatment of individuals. Matter of fact, Kaiser Family Foundation investigative reporter talked about this on a recent, well, not recent, few months back. An investigative team from Kaiser Family Foundation looked into where this money is going. And a lot of these dollars are not going to assist with opioid and drug prevention and drug treatment services. So let me play this from Scripps News, and then I'll close out from there.
A lack in the oversight. So where did this money go?
It's a mixed bag. There certainly is some money that's going towards treatment and recovery, but we've of local governments, counties, are using the money in ways that people find questioning and concerning. It's going to filling budget gaps, whether that's, playing or paying for staff insurance plans at the county level. Some places are putting it towards law enforcement, so buying squad cars for police, roadside cameras, these like lasso-like tools that can be used to apprehend people. And then some of it is going to private companies because there are a lot of businesses that see this money is out there and want their piece of it and are marketing their products. And there may not be the evidence to support those products doing what they say they do, but the money's going there nonetheless.
Nothing but lies. 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 Lies.
I mean, I can't, this, you can't make this up, right? But it's like, here we go again. We just saw this with COVID money and COVID relief, PPP loans and all of this. Now you have this money that's been set aside to actually help alleviate a major crisis in this country that still continues, but was truly crippling the country at a few years back. It is now becoming a concern that some of these states may look at this money as a windfall to kind of put in place of providing the services that is supposed to be dedicated to in terms of opioid addiction support and also recovery. Matter of fact, they talked about that in that same piece from CBS News where they were talking to Dr. Gupta. And it says here, because of the financial headwinds that have left many states hunting for alternative funds to maintain crucial services, opioid settlement money can seem like an attractive option. So far this year, more than $10 billion has landed in state and local government coffers in recent, not this year, but more than $10 billion has landed in state and local government coffers in recent years, and billions more are set aside to arrive over the next decade plus. So this is truly concerning. I mean, what we're looking at is a potential if you will, PPP loan debacle coming back a second time, but this time it's actually the states and not so much private business that will, potentially be utilizing funds that are supposed to be directed towards the eradication of drug overdose and drug addiction, specifically opioids and Oxycontin or the opioid addiction, if you will, that will not be utilized that way and could potentially be, leave several thousands, hundreds of thousands of people who are needing these support systems in place in dire straits, creating potentially another opioid wave of addiction for those who cannot receive help or treatment. As always, because we do want to help, if anybody you know who is dealing with opioid addiction or any drug addiction, there is a number you can call 1-800, and this is for the I always forget the name of this. This is for the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. That number is 1-800-662-4357. 1-800-662-4357. Better known as 1-800-662-HELP. Again, that's for the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. But that's my time for today. That's what I wanted to talk about. I wanted to cover this topic. I think it needs more light shed on it. And, as always, I'll post all this information in the video and, spread the information. The only way change occurs is through information and then action. But that's my time for today. As always, dreams are not just for sleeping. Please wake up and live your dreams. My name is Trey Evans, the people's voice. Tell somebody about the dream. Salute.